In the summer of 1976, thousands of military veterans entered one of Philadelphia's grandest hotels. They came for speeches, parades, political gatherings, reunions with men they had served beside. They came to celebrate the 200th birthday of the United States. Then they went home. And across Pennsylvania, men who had, seemed healthy only days earlier began collapsing with fever, chest pain, confusion in lungs that were being filled with infection. Some died within hours of reaching the hospital. Others, they never made it that far. Doctors, they could not identify the disease. Investigators, they could not find a poison. And although many of the victims had attended the same convention, some had never entered the hotel at all. The only thing connecting them was one place, the Bellevue-Stratford Hotel. For months, America watched as the country's leading disease investigators searched for an invisible killer that they could not isolate, they could not explain, and they could not even prove existed. Until one scientist returned to evidence, everyone else believed had already been exhausted. And what he found would give the world a new disease, permanently attach its name to the men who walked through this hotel. This is the story of the Bellevue-Stratford, the Philadelphia hotel that gave a disease its name. This one's crazy, right?
Sounds pretty wild.
Have you heard of this before?
I have not.
Me?
I don't think so anyways.
And, coming up on potential, they're getting ready to celebrate America's 200th. We just celebrated America's 250th not too long ago. Well, I didn't think it was long ago until I looked at the calendar and realized it's already been a month since July 4th. Where the heck did July go?
Ugh.
Yeah, double hook. Let's get into it. You ready?
I'm ready.
So before the Bellevue-Stratford became associated with illness and death and one of the largest public health investigations in American history, it represented something completely different, Meg. It was representing status, elegance, power. They're kind of cool. Paints the picture, right?
Right.
So the
ritzy.
Ritzy, yeah.
Okay.
Ritzy, like the crackers. So the building, it stood at Broad and Walnut Streets in Center City, Philadelphia, which was pretty close to City Hall. It wasn't hid on, like some forgotten back road. It actually occupied one of the most visible and prestigious corners in the entire city, the Bellevue-Stratford. I'm glad we figured that out. Bellevue. What do you think the origin is? Do you think it's French? Is it Bellevue?
That would be my guess.
Let's ask.
Although I think it would have an X on it, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
No, I'm still going French.
Is Bellevue French? Let's see here. The Bellevue is a French word. Do you know what it translates literally to?
Beautiful hotel.
Close. Beautiful view in English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Belle is the feminine form of beautiful. And view is, view or sight. Beautiful view or sight. Look at that. You took French. You should have known that. I took Espanol.
I spoke without thinking first.
Well, I can relate to that.
As soon as I said it, I was trying to put the words back in.
Yeah. Well, anyways, it's on a pretty prestigious corner. And it actually opened in 1904 after a reported construction cost of, guess how much? In 1904, this apparently cost
$100,000.
$8 million. That's a pretty enormous investment. At the beginning of the 20th century, that's a lot of money.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's prestigious power.
I guess so.
Right?
I would like to see it at its first days.
You have a phone. Look at it.
I will eventually.
Its owners intended it to compete with the finest hotels anywhere in the world. And visually, it made the argument before guests even stepped in. Meg's checking it out. She's gonna look at this hotel and see if I can beat her here. I mean, I've seen some of the pictures. It's wild. So if you put it out here, 1904, this is what it looked like. I mean, that's prestigious. That is wild. 1904, $8 million. And the architect type was the French Renaissance. It's pretty cool. It's pretty wild. But what else is pretty cool and pretty wild? Guess, just take a little guess. Who might have had a little say? I think from my history lessons. But guess who had a little say in building this and helped build this? Old George Bolt. from Bolt Castle in Alex Bay, which is near us, which we did an episode on there. The immigrant from Prussia. He was a kitchen worker at the Philadelphia Club. He did the whole Waldorf Hotel and stuff like that. But yeah, he was linked to it. See, it's full circle here on the Your Town podcast.
The interior of this place is
it's unbelievable.
Ridiculous.
I mean, it has marble staircases. It has like huge ballrooms, stained glass.
It appears to have marble walls.
It definitely did staircases. The ironwork for what it was in 1904 was just absolutely elaborate. There's chandeliers everywhere, restaurants, meeting rooms, hundreds upon hundreds of guest rooms. So after the expansion, because it wasn't big enough in 1904, Meg, 1912, after that expansion, the hotel was said to contain more than 1,000 rooms. It actually became known as the Grand Dame of Broad Street. Presidents would stay there. Royalty would stay there. Generals, politicians, entertainers, business leaders, and Philadelphia's social elite passed through its doors. Who the heck is Philadelphia's social elites in the 1900s?
Wow. It looks like one of those places where you would whisper.
The
whole time you're there, because
pinkies out when you're drinking,
because the sound would just bounce off all the walls. Marble. Don't want to disturb any of the rich guests.
Thousands of guests. Let's see. Philadelphia's elites in 1904 was actually 3 distinct groups, depending on whether you are looking through history. But there's a bunch of Henry McKee Midpoint, Dr. Aldrin Jackson, Dr. Edwin Howard, Warwick. There's a lot, I guess. A bunch of people I've never heard of. They stayed there. They went through these doors. And the Bellevue-Stratford hosted national political conventions and countless dinners, dances, weddings, meetings, and celebrations. It was more than a hotel, Meg. It functioned as a clubhouse for those super powerful people. A place where the city gathered to see and kind of to be seen. By the 70s, the 1970s, the Grand Dame was starting to show her age a little bit. Newer hotels offered more modern accommodations. Parts of Philly was changing. So the Bellevue-Stratford remained enormous and impressive, but maintaining a building of that size, it became pretty tough. Its glory, it started to fade a little bit. It kind of remained one of the city's most recognizable landmarks regardless. And in July 1976, it was preparing for one of Philadelphia's busiest summers ever. The United States was celebrating its bicentennial. Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence had been adopted 200 years earlier, stood at the center of the national celebration. So tourists, they came, they filled up the city. Flags, they hung from buildings. Events were scheduled throughout the summer. And from July 21st through July 24th, members of the Pennsylvania American Legion gathered for their annual state convention. So guess where the headquarters was, Meg? You have no guesses?
In Philadelphia.
Where?
At the Bellevue Hotel.
Nailed it. Approximately 4,000 Legion members, relatives, and guests, they came to Philadelphia for the gathering. Well, not all of them stayed right at the Bellevue. They were veterans. Many were older men. Some had served in the Second World War. Others, they served in Korea. They had survived battlefields, military hospitals, and decades of ordinary life afterward. Nothing about this convention appeared dangerous. There had been no attack, no visible accident, no explosion, no smoke drifting through the halls. Nobody saw a contaminated meal being served. Nobody smelled poison in the air. Nobody smelled gas. Do you know why we smell gas, Meg?
Because they put an additive in it.
Yeah. Thanks to what?
The big explosion.
The big explosion. We just did a couple of weeks ago. Go check it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know in the comments, too, people were like, yeah, I went to this school, the new school. And they tell us that's why gas smells like it.
Mm-hmm.
But the threat, whatever it was, it passed through that hotel unnoticed. Ugh, that's a lot. Let's talk about the convention real quick, just to kind of paint the scene, paint the picture a little bit more. The American Legion, the convention ran July 21st through July 24th. Delegates attended the meetings and ceremonies throughout the hotel and, other places in Philly. Crowded rooms, busy hallways, tons of people sharing meals and drinks. They moved between the hotel and the hot streets of Philly. The summer, it was pretty hot, but I think every old school story says how hot summer was. Can we just all agree summer's hot? Going through one of the hottest summers of all time. Obviously, air-conditioned buildings in this time, they worked, especially to keep big buildings like this comfortable. I'm sure in those cities, they had to send out messages like, try not to use your air. That's a lot on the grid, they say. Again, nothing about this convention suggested anything was wrong. But before the gathering had even ended, the first illness was already developing. The Legionnaires disease generally does not announce itself immediately after exposure. Symptoms, they unfortunately begin several days later. And that delay would become one of the reasons that this outbreak was tough to recognize. I mean, the Legion members, they did not all become sick at the hotel at the same time. They left Philly. They drove to different counties, different states. They came home to their wives, their kids, their jobs, their normal routines. But then the symptoms started. High fever, cough, chest pain, shortness of breath, the muscle aches, the headaches. Some patients, they got the pukies and the poopies. Others became confused and very disoriented. Their illness resembled severe pneumonia, but something about the case kind of felt unusually aggressive. The first identified victim passed away on July 27th, only 3 days after the convention ended. Then another was sick, and another, and another, and another. Hospitals in different parts of Pennsylvania began admitting older men suffering from very similar symptoms. At first, they didn't appear connected. A patient in one county might have had pneumonia. A veteran in another town had the flu. An older man collapsed during a hot summer day, maybe could have been a bunch of different medical problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was no centralized screen that was showing doctors that men across the state were all getting sick at the same time. The pattern had to be discovered person by person, phone call by phone call. One of the key early warnings came when an American Legion officially began hearing about members who had been pretty sick from Philadelphia when they got home, like seriously sick. So the number of reports, it no longer felt like an accidental thing going on. I mean, these men all attended the same convention, same city, many the same hotel. So on August 2nd, the Pennsylvania Department of Health contacted the Federal Center for Disease Control, the agency now known as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. By then, approximately a week had passed since the convention. The outbreak was already moving through its victims, and nobody knew what was causing it. It's crazy, right, Meg?
Mm-hmm.
So once investigators kind of understood that the illness might be connected, the investigation, well, it ramped up. It caught some attention of some higher up. So health officials had to determine kind of who attended the convention, where they stayed, which meetings they went to, where they ate, where they drank, when they entered, when they left, when they became sick. That's not an easy task, is it, Meg?
Not at all.
So, and they had to also figure out like kind of who had been there, got the same sickness, but maybe there was some people that wasn't, right? There was you have to imagine too, this is like, 76? They didn't have laptops and smartphones, right?
Right.
They had to go through paper records, registrations that the hotels had, the convention list, paper. A lot of phone calls, hospital records, handwritten questionnaires. They tracked patients across Pennsylvania and neighboring states. CDC investigators and public health workers, they interviewed a ton of Legion members, families, doctors, hotel employees, and anyone who might help kind of reconstruct what really happened. So the Bellevue-Stratford, it became the center of mystery. Investigators examined the hotel's kitchens, its food, its drinking water, its ice machines, its elevators, the cleaning products, ventilation, air conditioning, rooftop cooling towers, even objects handed out at the convention. They were now potential suspects. But the pattern wasn't simple. Not every sick person had stayed overnight at this hotel. Not every victim had eaten the same meal. Not every victim had attended the same meetings. Some people who spent significant time inside the hotel were completely fine. And some who became sick had only passed near the hotel. I feel like that detail is terrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
If people, they didn't have to sleep at the hotel, eat there, or even remain inside, whatever caused this sickness might have traveled through the air. So investigators, they ultimately identified a larger outbreak of, guess how many people, Meg? You had to guess.
3,000.
Close. 221 people became sick. 34 people passed away. A narrower count focused on those most directly connected to the convention identified approximately 182 cases, 29 deaths. So the numbers, they're a little off. Thankfully, it wasn't 3,000. That'd be a lot. But either way, there's often, the numbers are skewed, different definition, whatever. Numbers are numbers. It's the 70s. They don't even have a number.
Well, I was thinking like number of rooms times how many people were in each room, plus people walking by outside.
It's not a bad guess. I'm just saying, thankfully, it wasn't that many.
I'm just really good at guessing.
But what stinks is most of them were Legion members. But other people who had been near the hotel also got sick. The victims were primarily middle-aged or older. Smoking, chronic lung disease, and other underlying conditions appeared to increase the risk of serious illness. But in August 1976, investigators did not know what organism they were even dealing with. But they knew there was an outbreak, and they knew that people were dying. And people wanted answers, because the timing made the mystery even more frightening. Because earlier in 1976, American health officials had become deeply concerned about a possible swine flu pandemic. A strain of influenza had appeared among soldiers at Fort Dix, New Jersey. The memory of the catastrophic 1918 influenza pandemic still shaped the public health thinking a little bit. Federal officials, they launched an ambitious vaccination effort intended to prevent another national catastrophe. Then, only months later, veterans returned to the Philadelphia, and then there was a mysterious respiratory disease. So to the public, the connection seemed obvious. Was the pandemic officials, was this what they were warning them about? Had swine flu finally reached the American Legion convention? Initial lab testing? They said, nah, not the swine flu. But eliminating one possibility, unfortunately, created room for dozens of others. Could it just be another form of influenza? Was it maybe a previously unknown virus? It's got to be food poisoning, toxic chemical, heavy metal exposure. Who knows what music they were playing at the convention, right? A contaminated water supply. Some investigators considered nickel carbonyl, an industrial chemical capable of causing respiratory illness. Others question whether the outbreak might have been a little sabotage. Maybe the Beastie Boys, that's where they got the song, right?
Yeah.
The convention had brought thousands of veterans and public officials into this city for the bicentennial. This was the Cold War. International terrorism was growing fear. Conspiracy theories, they started to spread quickly. Some people, they said it was biological warfare. Others, they said the government did it. Newspapers, well, they ran stories daily. TV crews sat around waiting for updates. Death counts, they started to appear in headlines as families across Pennsylvania watched relatives struggle to breathe. The pressure on the team of investigators was pretty big. The country expected the CDC to identify the cause quickly. But Meg, sample after sample, there was just no clear answers. Tests for known viruses, they were all negative. Cultures, they didn't reveal any, familiar bacterial culprit. Environmental investigators collected water and material from the hotel, including liquid from its cooling system. Still no breakthrough. This mystery disease gained a name before it caused it. Because so many victims were Legion members, that's when they started to call it Legionnaires' disease. And the name stuck. But naming the illness, it didn't explain it. If only it was that easy, right? By late summer, the disease had become famous while the organism responsible remained invisible. That is increasingly getting scarier and scarier, isn't it, Meg?
Mm-hmm.
Oof. What are you thinking?
Legionnaires' disease.
Legionnaires. I'm sure have you heard of that disease?
I have not.
Yeah. I've heard of the disease. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I didn't, and I definitely didn't know it was created from this story, and that's crazy.
So
they finally get, the cause. They figure out, what the disease is, and the newly identified bacterium was eventually named Legionella pneumophila. How can I say that but not Bellevue? So Legionella honored in a grim way the American Legion members associated with its discovery, and pneumophilia roughly means lung-loving. So the disease became known as Legionnaires' disease. A milder illness caused Legionella bacteria, so without pneumonia, became known as Pontiac fever after an earlier outbreak. Where do you think, Meg?
At the Bellevue Hotel.
No, Pontiac, Michigan. Researchers soon realized that the organism itself, it wasn't new, only its identification was. Legionella had existed in natural freshwater environments long before the Bellevue-Stratford was built. The bacteria can become dangerous when they enter human-made water systems and multiply under favorable conditions. Large plumbing networks, hot water tanks, showers, decorative fountains, hot tubs, industrial water systems, and cooling towers used by some large AC systems. So when contaminated water becomes, gets broken down into the air into those little teeny tiny droplets that sometimes you see out of those air conditioning units, people, they can inhale those droplets into their lungs. Legionnaires' disease is not usually spread by one sick person coughing near another. It's generally acquired from contaminated water aerosol. So that explained why the outbreak looked so strange. I mean, Legion members had not necessarily infected one another. They just could have been exposed independently to the same airborne mist.
Right.
So the hotel's cooling system became the leading explanation. So investigators believed that Legionella had multiplied in warm water associated with the Bellevue-Stratford's cooling system. Those tiny little contaminated droplets were just traveling through the air, exposing people inside and people just walking by, innocent people walking by, breathing it in. But here's where you kind of have to separate the strongest conclusion from the cleaner story that was often told. Scientists did not uncover an untouched smoking gun from the hotel and match it perfectly to the victims, because by the time the investigators understood what organisms they needed to find, the cooling equipment had already been cleaned and treated. So the original environment conditions, they were gone, which made it absolutely impossible to reconstruct what really happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cooling tower theory fits the pattern and what scientists kind of know about the disease, but it remains kind of just the accepted explanation. But the precise path taken by every contaminated droplet cannot be proven even 50 years later. So the mystery was solved scientifically. The building's exact mechanical chain of events retained a very small but important uncertainty. I mean, that's wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
How, I don't know, it'd almost be tough to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no way to actually prove it. We just have to believe the story.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And with the discovery, it also transformed other unsolved outbreaks because they started to come up with new ways to test things. So like blood samples, for instance, and preserved tissue from early mysteries, they can now be tested because science is starting to catch up. And the 70s was a wild time for serial killers and stuff on some other episodes we did. 70s, I'm glad I wasn't an adult in the 70s. Anyways, researchers, they connected Legionella to previous clusters of pneumonia that had never been fully explained. One notable one was that Pontiac fever that we talked about, where employees and visitors they were at a county health department building. They started to get a fever, a headache, muscle pain. Nobody died, and the illness did not cause pneumonia. But it was only after the Philadelphia investigation that scientists really understood that the Pontiac outbreak was caused by Legionella bacteria. That changed how the public health officials started to view those modern buildings. The air conditioning and complex water system, they had been symbols of progress. They made skyscrapers, hotels, hospitals, offices, and convention centers much more comfortable. But those systems could create artificial environments where bacteria multiplied and spread. The building was no longer passive. I mean, its pipes, tanks, towers, temps, and maintenance practices, they could shape an outbreak. That is why the Bellevue-Stratford matters as a place. The disease, it wasn't created there. Legionella had existed for countless years, but the hotel was the one that kind of brought together the conditions that allowed the bacteria to grow, the machinery that may have carried it into the air, and population unusually vulnerable to severe infection. Then the victims scattered across Pennsylvania. The hotel transformed a naturally occurring bacterium into a public health mystery large enough that science, they were forced to see it. Isn't it crazy? It's been along forever. One convention, many unlucky people. You remember how many people?
200.
Hundreds of people. You said that not so confidently.
Listen, I have this thing called brain fog.
Fair enough.
I don't know.
It's fun.
Neither are names.
Pronunciation and is my kryptonite. It's okay.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
Do you know like how many outbreaks of this have been reported? Like, is there like a large number of outbreaks of this in the States?
Still?
Since knowing what it is?
I don't believe so, but I also don't know. That's a good question. Let's ask the phone before we wrap up. What was your question? Have there been any other outbreaks of Legionella disease since the Bellevue-Stratford incident in Philadelphia in 1976? Yes, numerous Legionella outbreaks have occurred worldwide since 1976, including major events like the 1999 and the 2006 outbreaks that were in the Netherlands and regular localized outbreaks in U.S. cities linked to building cooling towers, water systems, and hospitals. So one of them was in the Netherlands. That was in 99 and 2006. They went through it twice. There was a flower show that got over 200 people, and they actually had to change the national building safety laws because of it. Then over in Flint, Michigan, 2014, 2015, water switch led to a major municipal outbreak with at least 87 cases. 12 people died. The New York City 2015 South Bronx outbreak, 138 people were sick. I can't talk. And again, 12 people passed away.
Huh.
Good
I just wondered if it was like more, like if you saw more cases of it once they figured out what it was.
At least thankfully fewer, but still, I mean, this is within
like
10, 11 years, people are still getting sick.
Yeah. So those are bigger events. I wonder if there's like more like smaller.
I would have to imagine. And people probably.
The flower one kind of makes sense because you'd think that there will be misters.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the flowers hydrated.
Yep. Good question. All right. So now, if you were to stand across Broad Street from the Bellevue today, nothing about the exterior immediately announces what happened in the summer of 76. The building is still there, still pretty big. Its stone facade still rises above the intersection. Traffic, it just keeps moving past. People they enter, people they leave. City Hall remains visible nearby. There's no contaminated ghost town, no collapsed cooling tower lying in a field, no fence keeping visitors away. The place that helped give Legionnaires disease its name is alive. That, I feel like, is what separates this story from so many other disasters and stuff that we've kind of covered. Love Canal was emptied. Bath's school was destroyed. Entire mining communities have vanished. But the Bellevue remains in nearly the same Philadelphia skyline. Its identity changed, its rooms changed, its mechanical systems changed, its ownerships changed, but the building survived the disease that almost killed it. And 50 years later, every appearance of the phrase Legionnaires' disease still carries a piece of this place. The name, it doesn't describe the bacterium's origin, describes the people whose deaths forced the world to discover it. Veterans, they went to Philly for a convention. They came to celebrate the history of their country, the one they fought for. But instead, they entered the history of medicine. The disease was already in the world. It had already likely killed before. It had already struck the Bellevue-Stratford at least once. But until the summer of 76, it remained invisible. The hotel did not invent the killer. It gave science a scene where the killer could finally be found. And that may be the strangest part of the Bellevue-Stratford story. The building became famous not because something visible happened there, but because thousands of people passed through its doors believing nothing had happened at all. There was no alarm sounding. There was no evacuation. Nobody ran into the street. The convention ended normally. The guests packed their bags. They checked out. They drove home. And only then did the hotel begin to reveal what had been floating unseen around them. The place is still there. The disease is still here. And the name will always lead back to Broad Street, to the Grand Dame, to the veterans, and to the Philadelphia Hotel that gave an invisible killer its name. This has been the Yorktown Podcast. The strange, dark, and unbelievable true stories of real places. Small towns, big stories. We went with a big town, bigger story this week. I'm Matt. That's Meg. And the next time, Meg, or anybody listening, when you enter an old hotel, look around at the marble, the chandeliers, the rooms, and the history, the buildings they want you to see. Then remember that every place has another history. The one hidden in its pipes, its walls, its air, and sometimes in the things nobody knew we're even there. We'll see you next week. We'll come back and do it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Might as well. All right, that's all we got. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.